therapeutic in itself is very interesting. That really isn't what it says. Therapeutic usually means that some benefit has been bestowed on the patient, that a therapy is a treatment, and therefore you expect someone to move from a condition that was previously in some way less to a better position. So what they really mean, and this is especially true of the American school and Achenbach in Germany, is that the kind of therapy, pardon me, I shouldn't use that term, the kind of counseling that they propose based upon using the major thought systems of European philosophers has and claims has no benefit. Claims no benefit to the subject. They make no claim whatsoever. But they think, therefore, that is nonetheless it's significant in itself without in any way being a treatment, and therefore they don't see them in any way as a cure. They don't see that what they're doing in any way is a treatment. But they think that by just exposing the person in a crisis to a different kind of thinking than their own, a thinking that they can represent with clarity, that in itself, meeting another system, is significant in itself since it shows them another meaningful alternative and perhaps challenging to the individual. So it brings the person to the crisis in a therapy. The person is therefore stuck. At that moment, they then turn the tables around and start giving them what is in effect, though they don't use the word, though I do, an indoctrination. Because it is a moment where someone is informing someone else about a subject matter which they don't know, introducing them into a formal system, and therefore it's a tutoring. It's a tutoring system. That's why they don't think it has any particular therapeutic benefit in itself. It's not going to deal with any of the classic symptoms that one encounters in psychotherapy. Therefore, it's a tutoring indoctrination system. And I think of the two terms, tutor and indoctrination, I think tutoring is a better term since indoctrination presupposes that you want to help the person believe what you think. Where actually it's to try to confront them with another intelligible system other than their own and deal with the consequences on that within each person. This is a very interesting movement, therefore. It's taking it out of therapy. It's taking it out of the whole model of therapy. It's taking it outside of the medical model. That's the significance of this movement, as understood by Kohlen and the Achenbach movement from Heidegger. So it's a rejection of the medical model. And in its place, a didactic model, teaching model. Now, since this has started, it is spreading all over, as you can see. It's now in Israel, it's in South Africa, it's in Australia, it's in Canada, strongly in Canada, in Vancouver, also in Toronto. It's growing in Australia, the Institute of Soul Care, based upon the same premises I've just described. There's a split between these two people in Israel, Ron Levin and Shmulin Schuster. And they have started their own society for the advancement of this thought. They've started their own, and the interesting way to get into this is to get on internet and simply get in touch with philosophical counseling face to face. Go to Kohlen or any number of addresses I can give you later. Now, what happened? It really, in one way, the first in print, was Albert Ellis. Albert Ellis in America was the first person who really thought about the possibility of a rational treatment, a rational psychotherapy. He's the one who started it. And in 1964, Albert Ellis faced a crisis, and the crisis he faced was, his position was that therapy must be rational. Man is rational. Any difficulty they have is fundamentally a problem in the rational processes of thought, that for some reason they're working off a premise, and the premise they're working off of, which they assume to be true, is really something that's unexamined, and therefore the whole problem of therapy should be to try to straighten out their thinking. He was holding this view in 1964. He met so much opposition to it at the Institute for Rational Therapy, which became his institute, that he changed it and introduced a new term, rational emotive psychotherapy. That was a compromise. It was a compromise that he didn't like at the time, and I think he still doesn't like it. But he started the game, and it was very interesting. His early work was of such a nature that he saw this as really the direction in which psychotherapy should proceed. And he thought what should happen is that we should get together, people should get together to explore dialogue. He said that's where the real drama is. We have to understand dialogue, and therefore a therapist should become a master of dialogue. That was his early thought. He abandoned it. And that was a crisis. Had he stayed with it, then he would have been the founder of this system, and it would have gone in totally different ways. Now, there is another curious thinker here that started the Apeiron Society, Peter Mornstein, in the 80s in Canada. And he had an interest in Albert Ellis, and he continued it for a while, and I don't know anything that he has in print. I should know it, but I don't know it. As a matter of fact, when I go back, I'll find out what happened to him. But he was closely associated for a short while with Albert Ellis. He started going back in that direction, and I don't know what happened to him. Equally here is the Foundation for Critical Thinking that started in 1978 by Richard Paul. And therefore there was a whole movement that the real problem for teaching and for learning and for people is learning how to think critically, and that's the real goal of education as well as psychotherapy. Richard Paul pulled back away from the aspect of psychotherapy, and he remained therefore in the center for critical thinking. He saw that was got him in too much of a contest. So that's what happened. Now, I should say that I published a work on the use of Platonic thought as a mode of psychotherapy in 1961. That was published at the Yale Journal, the quarterly journal of studies of alcoholism, and showed how a philosophical approach based upon the dialogue and a kind of dialectic could be effective in understanding the dynamics of alcoholism. And I followed it up with another article in 1964 that was printed at Rutgers University Press. When I left San Francisco and went to New York to do some more work, I got in touch with Albert Ellis, who dropped me a note because he read my work, and we had a nice talk, and therefore this is the discussion I related to you, is the discussion I had with Albert Ellis in New York. Because originally we were going to work together, but when I saw that he was